What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Coffee Q&A, your daily dose of coffee Q&A here on the OnoCoffee channel. I'm Jay, your host, and we do this live stream most Monday through Fridays, 10 a.m. Eastern. And as you can see, we're back in the studio here, finally after a little bit of a time. Kent, how are you? Good to see you. How's it going? How was your weekend? I'm actually sitting here looking at lunch places because I feel like I want to have some lunch later. And here's the thing. I like to read, or I like to believe that I like to read, but I don't really get a lot of time to sit down and read. There's this guy, Scott Kirby. He's the CEO of United Airlines, and I was listening to a podcast interview with him, and he was talking about he spends 3 hours a day reading, and I was like, how is it that you can carve out 3 hours of your day? I guess when you have a whole staff of people, it helps, but I'm like, wow, 3 hours a day, that'd be great. So I tend to read when I eat, but I need to go to a place to sit down and eat, and I don't really do that very often. So today I'm thinking I want to continue this book that I've been reading, and so let me find a place. And so I'm looking what's in my area, but there's a lot of places to eat. The only thing is I'm a little bit picky. Like I want a place that's comfortable. I want a place that's quiet. I want a place that has nice food that I enjoy, right? My cousin, she sent me a text yesterday, and she's like, "Hey, here's a coupon. This burrito place has some discount." And I was like, "I've been there. I don't think I'll ever go back again." So, but of course, I told her, "Thanks, I appreciate that." But it's like, so now it's just trying to find a place that meets those criteria, and that's not terribly expensive, right? I don't want to spend $40 for lunch. I don't even want to spend 30, but I don't want to spend 20, right? It'd be nice if I could do it for cheap, but you can't have that. Mom, how are you doing? Good to see you. Dev, how are things in Honolulu? So today, happy St. Patrick's Day. As you can see, I'm wearing green. So I am cognizant of the fact that it is St. Patrick's Day. I was thinking, let's make some Irish coffee, but I figured that, if I made Irish coffee, then I shouldn't go out and operate machinery. Then I have to do some machinery work today. So it's like, that's probably a bad idea. So we're going to go to the next best thing. Every year at Spro, at this time of year, we would release a special coffee. And it's actually a coffee we talked about maybe a couple months ago. But it's a coffee that we make for St. Patrick's Day. It's called not that one. It's called our El Phoenix Feliz, right? So the Happy Phoenix. And why is it called the Happy Phoenix? Because we actually take this coffee and we infuse it with Teeling whiskey, right? So, and Teeling's logo is a phoenix, so Happy Phoenix. Actually, I had forgotten the lore between how they got that name. And I remember I was sitting there one day thinking about the name. And one of my former managers, Sue, she's actually from Ecuador, and she's like, "Why do you call it that? The Happy Phoenix?" And I said, "I thought you made it up." And she's like, "I didn't make that up." I was like, "Oh, well, I don't remember." But that's the whole story behind it. It's because, St. Patrick's Day, Irish whiskey, things like that. So we're gonna give this a try and just talk about that. So how's yours? Kent, I'm curious to know, here in the United States, St. Patrick's Day is a really popular not holiday, but although my deposits that I made on Saturday won't clear till tomorrow, so I'm thinking, is it a national holiday here in America now? I don't know, but the what do you call it? I'm curious to know, in Scandinavia, do you guys even acknowledge this? Is this even a thing? I don't know. A lot of times I'll be in the Philippines, right? And the Philippines is different because, they follow a lot of American things. So it's because of the years of American colonialization, this is what they don't talk about. Filipinos always talk about 400 years of Spanish rule, but they kind of gloss over the actual period of time when the United States came in, where the Filipinos had earned their revolution and freedom and independence from Spain, and then the United States came in and crushed them, and then dominated the place for 50 years, and putting in education systems and teaching subservience to America. So these are the things that they gloss over, and perhaps this is why we should not encourage education, right? Because I never knew anything about that when I was in high school. I never knew any of this. Then I went to college, and then in college I like had this kind of like renaissance where I was like, I should like look into where my people are from and what their history is about. And I started reading and learning, and I was like, oh, wow, this is not quite the history that I was taught. So as you can see, in America, education is bad. We don't encourage it. We're trying to discourage that, and we're trying to defund it because you know what? If you have people that think, they might think too much, and you don't want people thinking too much, right? Just buy Folgers, be happy, don't worry about it, right? Kent says the Irish pubs are full of people today, but nothing special otherwise. Yeah, here in America, like I don't know if you guys get into this, but like in America, like everybody wants to wear green. Like if I go out today and I'm not wearing green, people kind of like look at you funny. Right? They're like, how come you're not wearing green? Aren't you Irish? No, I'm not Irish. Do I look Irish? Do I speak Gaelic? But what can you do? What can you do? George with us. What's going on, George? I'm glad to see that you're back from at home. Yes, finally. It was good. Actually, we came back Thursday, but it was like we just didn't get to. I just wasn't able to get on the road early enough in time. So I was like, man, so disappointing. There's something excellent. Well, I'll come down and see you. Maybe not for a couple of days, but soon. Kent says there's been some talk of a Guinness crisis. Guinness crisis? What's going on with Guinness? Like they're not shipping it to Scandinavia? What's going on with that? George says history written by the victors, as the saying goes, so don't rely on the no doubt. Maku, how are you, man? Good to see you. Anton, I see I'm early. We're early. It's 10 o'clock. No, I don't know. Oh, we changed. Remember, I don't know if you recall, but we changed times, right? We had the time change last weekend where we jumped forward in America. I don't know if other people in the world do this. Like, not too many places do. In Honolulu, when I lived there, Hawaii doesn't do that. So it would just jump from 5 to 6 hour difference. Now, what is it different? Now we're 6 hours difference, right? Which means that you're up way early, dude. Like that, I'm always impressed. You and like Peter Lee, I'm always impressed because you guys are up at like such different hours from like how most people exist. Oh yes, some sort of delivery problem. Okay. We also do time change, but other times. Oh, interesting. 4:07. Yeah, man, I'm always impressed. Anton says it's 15:07. Yes, 15:07. And I was used to 16. Gotcha. Understood. Georgia says, even Guinness is being affected by Gen Z changing habits as far as beer is concerned. That's an interesting thought. Like, I do notice that my nieces and a lot of people that I know that are younger, they just don't. Yeah, the drinking is not as big a function of their social world, as it has been for my generation, and for a lot of other people. Like, when we were young, my friends, all they wanted to do is drink. They were like, let's get drunk. I was like, why would I do that? And I was never one that got drunk because I was like, it just never was my thing, right? It was like, despite having good friends, or at least I think they're good friends, I just never felt comfortable getting to allow myself to be so out of control that I would have to rely on somebody else. I always had to go home. And I was like, I always want to go home. Like, I never want to get out of control, right? Like I know guys got like, they got obliterated. Like, gosh, man. Like I've never puked from drinking. I've never passed out from drinking. I've gotten lucky while drinking, but never anything else. So that's a good thing. So let's get our coffee here. We're going to get this coffee. So what is this coffee? This coffee is a coffee that we take and we infuse with the Teeling whiskey. And how we do it, actually, you can see a video. There's a video on the Spro Coffee channel. I've got another channel called Spro Coffee, which they're kind of like upset with. YouTube's kind of upset with me because I haven't uploaded anything in over a year to that channel. But you can go there and you can see, if you look up the Phoenix Feliz, you can see how we actually infuse it. And so we actually take the whiskey and we spray it onto the coffee as it comes out of the roaster. So kind of like a cooling kind of approach. but also that what I started doing that years ago was that we wanted to to spray it onto the coffee as it came out because it would absorb the coffee, and the idea was it also kind of burn off the alcohol, right? Now, sometimes when we're spraying it, because we're molecularizing, is that how you because we're basically making it into little particles. What will happen sometimes as we're spraying it is that it will ignite, and then the whole thing catches on fire. Now, unlike an actual roaster fire where that's actually like a problem, this is actually more controlled. It's kind of like a flambe, right? You're just kind of burning off the alcohol, and you see, and in the video that we shot for, we're shooting it actually happened. So you can see it ignite in the cooling tray, and it's like, ooh, it was actually good for the video. I was like, that's good. That's good footage. That's good footage. Dev says, I'm at the shop working on our cold brew kegs. Whoa, man, good work, man. Good work. What time are you guys open? 7 or 6? George wants you to tell us more, Dev. Tell us more. Anton says, for us, time changes in 13 days. Oh, okay. We used to be later. Is that right? We used to have longer for standard time and less for, or maybe more equal, and people were just getting upset, so they made it longer daylight savings time, I think, throughout the year. Some people want to do away with it altogether. A lot of people complain because they're like, oh, I can't sleep, and I'm like, it's an hour. Like, how different? And maybe because I have this perspective of like, I traveled a lot across the world, so like I'm used to like jumping time zones from like, and struggling with that over like 12-hour periods. So to me, an hour is like a day's worth of adjustment. That shouldn't be. To me, it's not. But of course, if you're not used to doing that kind of thing, it's probably much more difficult. So I can't be the barometer for that. Probably didn't even have time to make coffee. Oh, so sorry, man. So sorry. And how is the espresso machine coming along? We haven't had the time to really chat too heavily because it turns out that as I was filling out the form to start the live stream, turns out that it's been a month since we've been in this space. So it's like, oh wow, we've really been on the road a lot lately. Marcus says alcohol is getting less popular as THC grows in popularity. Oh my. I believe THC is healthier overall, so it's probably a good thing, in my opinion. Probably. I don't know. Is it? Like, I think that impairment is never a good thing. I want to say that because, like we've come to the point now of accepting that drinking is bad. Drinking while driving is bad. We haven't come to the point of drinking or smoking pot while driving is bad, which I can't see that it's any better. Like, I've been high. No. I've heard what it's like. You should be. You shouldn't. It's not a good idea to try. Atomizing, thank you very much, George. That's exactly what I'm saying. Anton says that alcohol is a different heap of problems. Yeah, for sure. And then Ali Coffee, where Dev works, on Baratania Street. Is it King or Baratania that you're on? Is open at 7 a.m. Opens at 7 a.m. So much to do. Anton says, it's great. I'm experimenting with the profile with 7 stages. Oh, wow. Call it the double steep. You're going to have to let us see more about this. We're going to be interested to see more. All right, so let's go to the coffee. So I already told you we burn the coffee. We atomize it like this, and then it lights on fire. Now, we don't always try to light it on fire. I try not to light it on fire. Oh, see, look at this. I have to turn the scale on. We went back to the Fellow O Gen 2. Is that right? This is the Fellow Tally Pro. I don't know the difference. I'm terrible at that. Probably should use a scoop. All right, 24.5. We're going to give a little bit of extra there because you know what? It's St. Patrick's Day and we're kind of happy about that. And then let's get our grinder here, our Fellow O Gen 2. We're like all fellows suddenly. Like, fellow it out. Now, I did change the grind setting the other day because I was grinding some coffee for myself, which is an unusual thing. But I was doing the immersion, so I had it coarser. We're going to go back to our kind of middle setting here, just a little bit this way of the 6. Is that right, the 6? Yeah. And I'm going to grind there. Saul's with us. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you as well. Good to have you. Good to have you. And the power plant, how's it going? Good to see you as well. All right, so here we go. I've started planning our move of the studio to the new space. I'm actually going there today to do some work on the bar to cut it, basically cutting it in half, and then going to mount it differently. Okay, so we're going to use today, we're going to go a little bit old school with the plastic Melita filter, right? This is the Melita pour over. This is kind of the OG pour over. Like you buy here you can buy this at the grocery store, most grocery stores. See, it says Melita. You kind of see it there, Melita. And this you get for like $5. So it's super cheap, really easy to use. I mean, very similar to everyone else. And it does have one teeny tiny orifice. So we're going to see what happens with that. And it does have some ribbing. It's kind of hard to see. It's kind of black in here. Hold on, let me grab this light. So you can see now a little bit. You can see there's some ribbing in here, right? I mean, this is the OG. This is like, these guys in Austria. They came up with this, and like, they've been doing this for generations. It's kind of like a friend of ours, Reinhardt, works for a family called the Meerfeld family. And these are people that have been doing, their industry for hundreds of years, hundreds and hundreds. It's like, well, it's like Melita. They were hundreds of years doing this. The Austrians, they're very industrious people. Okay, so we're going to take that. And so, of course, we have the Melita number 4 filter. This is our generic number 4. And as you've seen before, I like to fold over our seam. Fold that over here, fold that over here. Drop this in here. Naomi's with us. What's going on? We are brewing something Irish. We are brewing our Phoenix Feliz, our teeling infused coffee, so that I don't have to get wasted by drinking whiskey today. And it says, Melita's infuriating for me. The filters never quit. It fits fairly good. I mean, I guess it fits fairly well. Like, I don't know, like how much it needs to fit, right? But I mean, it is the wedge shape, so. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? Sorry. It'll take a couple more minutes because I forgot that I've been doing this so long. I'm kind of out of practice that I didn't heat the water. I didn't heat the water. Didn't we talk about this? We talked about this on Friday, I think. So someone asked about the kettle. I like to just use a kettle with the butane boiler, right? So just put it under there. I think that's, especially if you're a little bit budget oriented, and I'm not necessarily budget oriented, but I like this setup. I just like the romanticism of boiling my own water. That's really what it comes down to. George says, when you run beans that have been flavored through the grinder, do you worry about residue left behind, clogging the burrs and upsetting subsequent grinds? No, not really. And in this case, I've not come across any issues with doing this in this grinder. Like the last time we made this coffee was, I think, in January, and ran through the grinder. I did not taste any residual flavors after that. I think you would have to run a lot of it through. And in this particular case, since it is the alcohol that is just kind of burned off and some of the flavor remains residually, I think that's going to be a little bit different than, let's say, like chemical flavorings that we're adding, artificial flavorings that would be added in a typical flavored coffee. where they would be probably more prone to sticking around. I don't know. I don't know the science. I haven't really thought too heavily on that, to be honest. But I have not had it much. I have not had any experiences where the use of this coffee was very detrimental to subsequent cups. And at Hamden, we were very much, brewing everything by the cup at the moment. So if there was residual flavor left over in the grinder, despite having cleared the grinder, then that would have been we would have noticed that. I think I would like to believe that we would have thought about that. Paige, good morning. How was the tasting on Saturday? Yeah, Saturday. Interested to know what you thought, what you tasted, and what you thought about that. Anton says, well, when in doubt, just no doubt. We can just always run a rice through it. Like, I've run rice or some other substance, but I don't know about all these specific like pills for cleaning your grind. Do you need that? I don't know if I need that. I've tried them, but I don't know if I get any better result or any really necessarily different result than rice. And since I have rice in my normal life, it's not very hard to go grab a little handful of rice and toss it in the grinder and then let it rip. But if I had to go buy rice for the purpose, maybe I would just buy the other stuff. Oh, but the rice is cheaper. I can buy cheap par-cooked rice. I mean, I could buy par-cooked rice for pretty cheap and get a lot of it. And if I didn't eat rice and I wanted to make, let's say, horchata, I could use it for that. Kent says, and Anton, for me with the Kalita, it's my least favorite brew. But we're gonna try to see if we can make it better today. I think where the problem with this is gonna lie is in the fineness of the hole. Right, the hole is really, really small, so there's going to be some heavier restrictions. So since we did grind the coffee prior to talking about this, I'm kind of wondering, should perhaps we grind coarser than we would normally do, because we're going to have so much. Presuming we have so much more restriction, maybe we need to go coarser so that we can reduce the rate of extraction, right? If our flow rate is being reduced significantly, then finer particulates gives greater exposure, surface exposure to the water. But if we grind coarser, we're giving less surface exposure to the water, and therefore should retard the extraction rate. My theory. These are my theories. Naomi says, Amiel uses the Steadfast brewer and it's also wedge shape and he loves it. Amiel has such a nice setup, doesn't he? I love his setup there. Anton says, I had to brush off my burrs after the Koji coffee because it was still tasting stale. Oh wow. I meant more like taking apart. Oh yeah. If you're still tasting it, we did not have that residual flavor the last time. I mean, we'll see today and tomorrow if there's any residual flavor. And also the level of infusion, or the level of alcohol infusion that we're using is really, really minimal. It really just gives a light hint of the whiskey rather than like it tastes like whiskey coffee. At least that's the intention. George says, Anton, totally get it. Recently, I drank a Koji distilled whiskey from Japan, and I still can't get it. Koji does have very interesting character to it. Paige says, the caffeine crawl was so much fun. I don't think I've ever made it to that stage of caffeination. It was great to get to talk to Scott Moore and other folks involved with the crawl. Oh, awesome. Yeah, Scott's a great guy. It was his birthday over the weekend too. I don't know if you mentioned that, but it's his birthday. It was his birthday. I only know this because it comes across my feed, and his girlfriend Mary's always like posting, it's my Scott's birthday. It's like, oh, right on, dude, right on. The power plant says, I'm a fan of changing the brew methods and keeping the ground size consistent, but it sometimes cannot be helped. Understood. Anton says, you suddenly get drunk every time you brew coffee and you don't. Yeah, sometimes you just get away. We'll do that for the special release. All right, let me see if this thing's still not brewing yet. I mean, it still hasn't boiled yet. It takes, a watch kettle doesn't boil. Yeah, so the reason I've been reading this book, like I said, the reason I was looking for a lunch spot, because I'm trying to read this book. I'm reading this book called The Anarchist Design Book. And while you may be familiar with the Anarchist Cookbook and Anarchist book that are all about fomenting revolution, that's not really what I want to do. The Anarchist Design Book is actually written by a furniture maker who's talking about breaking away from furniture design. Right. So if you look at like classic furnitures that are in museums and stuff, he makes a point. He's like, a lot of those stuff, those are the furniture of the rich, like King George tables, Queen Anne's, Chippendales, all these things. They're all rich people's tables. And who are the benefactors of museums? Rich people. So they want to see their furniture, in the museums. But he talked, and this guy, Christopher Schwartz is his name. He talks about how the common man's furniture is ignored in throughout history. And it's like, that's probably true. Like, what did the average? So while there's the dudes that have like the King George tables in their estates, what kind of furniture do the people that living in the council estates have, right? And that's kind of what he talks about in this book. And it's kind of interesting. And it's like, he talks about like stake construction for furniture, like where you're like, those like Windsor type chairs with the stakes in them. He talks about things like that, and it's kind of, I'm finding it to be wonderfully fascinating. And so I just want to find more time to sit down and read, because I find it terribly difficult to have time to read. And I try to find time, if I try to carve out that time when I'm having lunch, and hopefully in a nice spot where I can just sit down and like read. And unfortunately, I don't have the hardback cup version yet, so I'm only using the online, and I'm like, it works, but it's hard to go back and find things. Like he mentioned this book called Human Dimensions and Interior Design, or Human Dimensions and Interior Space. And what it's a book about like mechanics for humans, which is a book that I've been like wondering if it existed. I've been trying to figure this kind of thing out just through my own anecdotal experience. When designing like cafe spaces, tables, chair placement, how high should the table be? How high should the bar be? Like this bar here is 42 inches, but which is great for a service bar, like an alcohol bar where you're standing back and you're working with like all the stuff you see at a regular bar. And then you're putting your drinks up and the guest is sitting there. That's 42 inches is a great height, but I think it's for a working height, it's pretty high. I think 38 for kind of a compromise bar where you can like serve guests and the guests are comfortable and you can also work at the surface. 38 is a pretty good height. These are just thoughts. Okay, so we got the water is now boiling. Paige says, nope, he didn't mention his birthday to my group. Did you know? Jason Burton. That name sounds very familiar, but I'm not too recalling offhand who he is. The power plant says, keep things humble and go with Amish and Shaker furniture. Oh yeah. I like their style of furniture. I've got a couple pieces from them. I do have some I have one like King George. I have a King George tilt top pie crust tea table that I bought I bought it from the Honolulu Academy of Arts many years ago when they were paring down their collection. Oh, and I need to put the coffee in. But it just kind of sits there, and I use it, but it's just sitting there. There's some pictures on it, and that's about it. That's kind of the use of it. All right, so here we go. And since Naomi is watching now and with us, I have to do this correctly, which I evidently have not done correctly. What in the world? All right, we had 24.5 grams. Tear this out. Now we're going to add this. 24.1. Oh, I guess there's 4 grams floating around somewhere. Oh, there it is. Still inside the thing. But that's all right, because the nice thing about this, it tells us what to do, how to adjust. All right, so we're 24.2, 350 grams of water. We're going to hit this button and turn it on. Now we're going to begin. Let's begin. 85 grams, good. Paige says, this is why I started enjoying audio. You know, I don't mind audiobooks. I used to listen to a lot of them, but in the car now, I'd like to enjoy like podcasts. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, listening to YouTube videos. Like I'll put the YouTube video on and it will, you know, it'll play like a regular YouTube video, but I'll just listen to it instead of watching because that would be detrimental to. Okay, just want to make sure that all the coffee's saturated. See, this has a little bit, a light, kind of like a light aroma of the whiskey. It's not a really forward thing. Like I don't want it to be forward. I'm going to be very subtle, right? Just very subtle. Because I don't want guests to come in and have it at the shop and think that, oh, am I going to get drunk? I don't want them to question that, right? Because there is no alcohol left. All right, 200 grams. Oh, we're going pretty fast, I guess. We're going pretty fast. Power Plant says, keep things helpful. Go. Did I say that? Yeah, I like that stuff. I like that stuff. George says, shaker furniture is not very expensive, though. I think that it's more about where you're getting it from. There used to be an unfinished furniture place years ago near where I live, where they would make this pine furniture, a lot of it in the shaker style, and you'd buy it for pretty cheap, but you had to finish it. So I bought they had a little postal desk that I bought, and I used that in my humidor. I painted it up with kind of nice colors, and I put it in the humidor, and it's kind of like supposed to be like, you know, the cigar cutter's desk. Not quite this, but it's similar, but not quite the same. You know, even though I said that, you know, the hole is small, I feel like we're going pretty fast, right? 215, 256. So, you know, the Austrians, I guess they know what they're doing. We don't need to second guess them. Power Plant says true, but it's meant to be plain. Agreed. And I think a lot of it's going to also be with like the types of woods that they're using, right? Like some woods. I was just at a sawmill this past weekend, and you know they had some sapele from Italy, which while I really like a lot of American hardwoods, like I like the idea of working with local woods. But I was at this place in Sykesville, Maryland, called Timberline Farm Sawmill, and he had this piece of sapele, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, I'm going to make a table out of that sucker. It's gorgeous figuring. It was like beautiful. It was like super, super gorgeous. I'm working right now on a table that's going to feature a little bit of Hawaiian koa that I have. But it's going to be, the Hawaiian koa is extremely expensive. Like it's always been an expensive wood, even when I was living in Honolulu many years ago. It's always been extremely expensive. But you know, now it's very, very expensive. Okay, we're almost there. 346, 349. Now, you know, we're really not off target as far as time. 348, 349. So maybe it's a little bit slow now. Like I said that earlier, we're 4 minutes. We should be done by now. But so again, as the minor sediments have settled to the bottom, it creates more resistance. Naomi says, it's hard to find a chunk of time to read during the day. Something always pops up, but as part of my sleep ritual, I enjoy. I like that. I tend to do a lot more. Like before I go to bed, I usually watch YouTube videos. I have a little laptop trying to figure out what is a hand planer and why do I need it, and more importantly, how do I tune it? I don't get it. It's very. Paige says Jason's out of Kansas City and the main organizer for the Caffeine Cross. Oh, so it was something organized that wasn't necessarily organized by Carborough. I wasn't sure exactly what it was about. I just knew that they were doing some kind of tasting. I figured that, you know what, if you wanted to experience nice quality coffee, I think Carborough is a great place to go. Really, really a great place. And I hope it lived up to that. to that thought. Powerplant says ostentatious furniture is kind of cringe. It is, and I think that's something that newer generations of people have started to think more about. Like a friend of mine had he had been collecting furniture for quite a long time throughout his lifetime, and he's older than me, and he was like, he was selling it off at auction, working with an auction house, and the auction house was like, the problem is a lot of people today aren't really into the brown furniture, all these older like Queen Anne style kind of furniture. They're not so into it anymore. I think a lot of the trend now is to what they call MCM, or mid-century modern, which is really kind of trendy and popular now. For me, I always thought it was kind of funny because my aunt, who married her husband, my uncle, in New York State, they actually lived in Long Island, and a place called Manhasset, and my uncle evidently came from a family that was pretty well to do, and they didn't live like opulently. They lived very comfortably for a couple. For a family, they had a nice mid-century modern house in Manhasset, right by the Americana Mall, and I remember going there a lot, and I spent a lot of time at their house, and kind of like a one-level house. And my aunt was always like, when you come to the city, just come stay at the house. Just the key is here, and just the bedroom is always available. So that's awesome. But this house, and I remember like it was kind of old. It was, for me, in high school, it was old. I go, and they had all this old furniture, right? And they had all this old audio equipment. You had things like Macintosh. Look at that old fuddy-duddy Macintosh audio system. What is that all about? These big old like Macintosh speakers, whatever they were. And they had all this furniture. And of course, they're of that age when they bought contemporary furniture, which was mid-century. Like I was trying to get in touch with my cousin, their children, and I was like, "Do you have any photos of the house?" Because like now that I think about it, it's like this house was like, I mean, like people that are really into mid-century modern stuff would probably like lose their shit over this. Like, they'd be like, "Oh my God," because the house was totally like that. Everything was like that, like all that mid-century modern style. And I just remember being there in the 80s, being like, this stuff is old. It's all of this stuff. Why do you have this? It's all old. It's kind of ugly. It's all like orangey looking. What's this teak? Teak is cheap wood. No, I didn't know anything about that. But it's kind of funny now because I was thinking like, man, I was like in a treasure trove of like mid-century modern stuff. And like my uncle, like I said, he came from I think he comes from the M&M Mars family, right? Somewhere along there. I think that's where it is. But basically, and whatever it is, like he lived a nice life. Like he had, back in the 70s, he had a brand new Porsche 911. He would take my father on joyrides. Like my uncle loved to drive. He was a driver. He loved, and I don't know if he ever worked too much. Like when I reflect upon it, like what did my uncle do? I have no idea. He was just a cool dude, my Uncle Frank. And I was like, interesting. I'm gonna get rid of that. And Naomi says, I hate when I don't work the Tally Pro. I know, there's so many we have to do. It's like so difficult to keep up with. George says, well, will do. I'm interested in the experience, but also how he organized them and then enlist participants. Wait a minute, am I? Oh, I see. Just looking up the caffeine crawl. That would be interesting. Saw furniture, says George. I'm not familiar with saw. Is that the style of furniture? I'm not familiar with that. Paige says that they have a great website with dates and crawls, and they're super active on Insta as well. Oh, interesting. All right, excellent. Paige says Carborough has been one of my favorite roasters since I discovered them several years back, but it's awesome Scott has been doing the direct partner. Oh yeah, the guy is like definitely one of the leaders. And the best thing about Scott is that he's not, what I really like about him is that he's not ostentatious about it. He doesn't really brag about it. He doesn't talk about, like I see a lot of these roasters and they talk so much about their sourcing and all this stories about. And they went on a trip with their. Here's the thing: like, you, as a coffee roaster, you can go to Origin. It's very easy. If you're buying from any of the big, any importer, it's not even big, mate. If you buy from any importer, you typically can get an invite to go on one of their Origin trips where they're going to bring a bunch of roasters with them to a place, and they're going to have a formal kind of tour where they have an agenda. I mean by agenda, I mean they've got a schedule, right? And you're going to visit the farm, you're going to meet the farm, you're going to taste some coffee, and it's an origin trip, and it's great because a lot of these roasters would never have, they probably wouldn't necessarily have the wherewithal to do it, because there's a whole world of logistics to take people to a whole new country, and then take them to farms and stuff like that. And so, if you're doing it by yourself, like I've done many times, you got to kind of forge your own way. Where this is all, and I've been on these trips as well, and I like them because I don't have to think about it. Like, I just get on. They typically will have a bus or a van. You just get on the bus, get on the van, you go, and they've already made all the arrangements. I don't have to call anyone. I don't have to do any kind of scheduling. It's all taking. So it's really a great thing to do. But it's not quite to the same as what Scott does or other people have done, where you're actually going to the farms and you're meeting the farmers, and and you're building relations over time because you're dealing directly with them. I will use importers for handling some of the logistics part, but the negotiation and the tasting and all that, and the actual sourcing of the coffee we'll do ourselves. And it's very difficult to do all of it yourself unless you've got a big staff and all this kind of and all this support systems. But we'll use a variety. We'll use a blending of both. Some of them are direct trade, really direct trade, and some are just we're working with importers because they've got great relationships too, as well as great access to great coffees. The thing is where the difference between going to an importer and going to the producer is that sometimes you find really serendipitous, you have serendipity with coffee. You just find coffees that perhaps your importer would never have considered because maybe it's outside of the scope of what their buyer wants to bring in or what their program allows, or it's just too small a quantity for them. An importer has to have so much quantity of a coffee to bring it to the United States or to bring it to whatever country because they need to sell it and they want to make, they want to sell, they want to have enough of it to go around. Whereas, if you're buying it for yourself, for your own company, maybe there's a bag lot of something. You can buy that bag lot if you want because you love it. And it's something that could be completely different than anyone else offers. But it's only a bag. Or maybe just a few bags, Dev says, speaking of woodwork, I'm trying to make my own table with much of cigar bands and a coffee bean river down the middle with an epoxy resin coating. Any wood recommendations? I mean, depending on how much cigar bands you're going to put, if you're going to do cigar bands, then perhaps it doesn't really matter, right? What you want to find, I'm going to speak as though I know what I'm talking about. But I really kind of don't. I'm basing a lot of this off of stuff that I've heard from other people that are much more experienced than me, and some of it's also based on my experience. But what you want to find is wood. So if you're going to cover it all, so you don't really see too much of the wood, then you can use any wood that's cheap. But here's the thing: you'll probably have suboptimal results by going to get wood from, let's say, Home Depot. Right? Because Home Depot wood, especially the pine and the fir that they're using for construction lumber, let's say 2x4s, which you can make great stuff with these 2x4s, but you kind of have to pick through them. But one of the things about these type of woods is that at Home Depot is that they're also pretty wet comparatively. They're quickly grown, young growth, and then cut up, and that's why you see a lot of them that'll be twisted because they're still kind of wet. Comparatively, it's very much similar to coffee roasting. So you want to have lumber that has been dried down to about 8 to 10%. maybe 11% at the most. And they do so, like in coffee, they have these moisture meters that you can use to measure the water moisture content of your wood. But that's one of the downsides of going to, let's say, Home Depot for buying your wood, because it's going to be a little bit more wet, a little bit lower grade. Now, if you can, in Honolulu, I don't really know all the suppliers out there, but I'm sure there are lumber dealers there. So go to a lumber place, try to find a lumber place, and ask them like what's good, and because what you want is more stability. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to make a table and suddenly it starts to twist, right? So yeah, make sure you get good lumber that is dry, and good lumber meaning dry. Like if you're going to cover it all with the cigar bands, you don't really then, like I said, pine is perfectly fine. Right? Pine would be fine. If you want to give it some color, you could stain it on the underneath, or stain the wood so that then when you glue, I guess you're going to glue the bands on. And then I'm presuming you said river, so you're going to want to put like a river of coffee beans, right? And then you want to epoxy over it. I mean, that's all very doable. You do have to build a mold. A mold for your resin epoxy, so that a non-stick. You can look online. They have these. I've never done it. I'm actually not. 2 years ago, I was like, "Oh my god, that's amazing." Now I'm kind of like, I'm not really into it. Not to say that you shouldn't be into it. I'm just saying that I've been playing with other finishes for wood, and I'm kind of moving in that direction. But what I'm saying, so it's like. But you do need to build a mold that will allow that will be. A lot of these guys will take melamine and they'll cut it down make it into like a tray, and then they'll use this like tape, this particular tape that they line it with that helps to prevent the epoxy from adhering to the mold, and so they can break those off and then pop the whole thing out, and then they I guess some of them will like route it, finish it, and then sand it. But if you want that river, a lot of times people use the live edge. So you can get live edge, or you can actually simulate the live edge. Like if you get a grinder with like the type of cutter, there's a Kutzall. I think it's called Kutzall, Kutzall. They have a little grinding disc, and you can kind of and create you could take a straight board and then gouge it to make it look like a live edge, and then you can put them together. Put the coffee in, you have all the stickers on them, and then pour the resin in and be perfectly done with it. This is how I would, if I was to make something like that, this is how I would think about doing it. Sean Brown, how are you, man? Good to see you. Welcome. Craig's with us. What's going on, Craig? Happy St. Patty's Day from the non-51st state. And kudos for staying that way. I see on my feeds that Canadians are really pissed off right now. And I'm like, rightly so. All right, let me see here. George says the MCM was the epitome of mod design back in the day. We didn't know how big an impact would have. Yeah, I was really I now I kind of wish I had some of those pieces. They're like, I wonder. I mean, I didn't think much. Honestly, I didn't think much of them back in the 80s. I was like, meh. It was just furniture to me. It's like kind of old looking furniture. They needed new modern furniture, Power Plant says the cyclical nature of fashion and design always. It is like soon we're back to bell bottoms. And mullets. Mullets will return someday, if they haven't returned yet. Paige says, I can see the passion for the craft and the people he works with. It shines through when it's true. Oh, that's for sure. Oh, you with Scott? Absolutely. Scott for sure. Scott's a really, really, I really can't say, I really have only accolades to talk about with Scott, because he's really one of the few people in the industry that I know that are truly genuine, genuinely good person with good intentions, experts level knowledge, many years of field experience. Like, he's like the best. Like, I remember one time he was telling me, like, so when I used to do the judging, like he does, he's been doing, he was at the highest level of judging longer than I was. He's still there. I'm no longer there. And he would teach certification courses, right? So in order to be a judge at the world level, you have to take a certification course and pass it. I remember one year he was teaching the certification course, but in his file, he also needed to qualify as a judge. This is the guy that's teaching the class, and he has to qualify. He's teaching other people and certifying other people to be world-class, world-level judges. And the people that are running the organization are like, you need to certify. And he's like, and then as they do now, they don't really run certification courses very often and not in very convenient places. So he's teaching it somewhere like in Italy or something like that, or maybe in the United States or whatever. But since he taught the class, he can't take the class. And because he taught, despite the fact that he taught the class, it won't count towards his certification. That year, he had to, I think it's 2013, he had to fly to Melbourne to take the certification course there under a different instructor in order to be certified. And I was like, that is some BS, man. Like, I was like, this organization is some BS. And they're still as myopic and dumb as they are then today. I think the SCA, WCE, they're like, this is where, like, to me, where, everyone's like, oh, they're very liberal. They're very liberal, but they're just as bad as any of the worst conservatives. They're just as bad. They're just as racist. It's like, just as prejudice. Baldhead says, error pressing the House Nation this morning. Ooh, nice approachable. Oh, I'm glad. It's meant to be approachable. It's meant to be approachable. Malcolm says mullets have most definitely returned. Oh, with a little more style in the business. Okay, that's good. That's good. I feel like I haven't had a haircut in a couple months, and I'm starting to feel like I'm getting a mullet. Like, I can actually feel the hair like too long here. Like, I gotta call my barber and maybe go there tomorrow. I'm gonna go there tomorrow and get this cut off. Power Plant says seeing younger adults with unironic mullets is, oh my, really? I have not seen this. I probably need to leave the house more. So wait, I'm drinking the coffee. So how's the coffee? So this is our Phoenix Phillies. This is our infused Teeling whiskey infused coffee for St. Patrick's Day, and it's nice and pleasant. The whiskey character, it's apparent, but it's also rather subdued. It's not meant to be in your face. It's not meant to be very fronting. It's just meant to be very, like, mild and just kind of an undertone. Like, you just get that, like, taste of the whiskey in the background. The roast itself is a medium roast, so it's kind of got this little bit medium, full-bodied, maybe slightly sinister character to it. Like, I think that St. Patrick's Day is only good if there's a little bit of sinister element out there. But clean, sweet. I mean, that's actually quite good. Sometimes I'm surprised by myself. George says, how pronounced is the aroma when you bring that up the glass to drink? Let's see. How pronounced is it? I don't think it's very pronounced, but very, very minimal. Very, very minimal. At least I think it's not. It's not like when I take the whiskey itself and smell it. It's kind of like, it's very light. Again, it's very light. And quick and fleeting on the end, right? It's like, it leaves it clean. Yeah, the palate is clean when you're done. And clean there's a little bit of dryness. Yeah. All right. That's enough babbling for today. All right, like yeah, that's good. So St. Patrick's Day here in the world. I was going to say here in America, but yeah, it's St. Patrick's Day everywhere on the planet. I don't know why. George says it is so the effect is really strictly in the taste. Yeah, really the taste. Mouthfeel different. Maybe that, like I said, maybe there's a little bit of dryness because of the whiskey on the finish, but I don't think it has that much of. I mean, that's what I would say the effect is. It's a little bit. There is that dryness on the finish. Sean Brown says, I have whiskey infused coffee from a UK roaster called Iron and Fire, called On the Rocks. It's lovely and it's kept in aged whiskey. Oh, that's a good idea. So do you happen to know if they're keeping do they take the green coffee and put them into whiskey barrels? Is that how they're getting the infusion? That's kind of I like that approach. We were trying to work with Flor de Caña in Nicaragua, getting their, and I think one of my producers actually did this finally, because he was telling me last year, he's like, I finally am doing it. And I go, good. Well, let me have some so I can try, because I've been telling you this for the last like 10 years. But to do something similar, my thought was not to, like a lot of people in coffee would take like used wine barrels, whiskey barrels, whatever, and put the green coffee in it, and then, add the effervescence of the alcohol that way. I didn't want to do that. What I wanted to do is I wanted to see if we took used rum barrels, because Flor de Caña is a rum producer in Nicaragua. And mainly because they're there and my producers are there, and it's probably easier to get that than to take barrels from some American company and ship it all the way down there. We could truck them over from Manoa, but the idea was to take the coffee and ferment in the barrels to see what happened. I told them, let's do one batch and see what happens. I'll buy it. I'll pay for it. It's fine. Yes. Okay. So they do that. Okay. That's great. That's great. Now, how does it taste? I mean, is there any, are there any specifics besides lovely that you might be able to discern? Not that you have to. I'm just curious. I mean, this is nice. I like this. I think this would be enjoyable. Like if I had decided to have a cigar, that could be fun. That could be fun to have. Maybe I'll keep this around all day long, and later today, when it gets cold, I will try it again. George says, sounds like explore the actual fruit. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you're willing to try something, and you don't know how it's going to. I don't have any idea how it would turn out, But it could be interesting. Could lead to something interesting or positive, or maybe not. I mean, it could be a disaster. It's like when we were working with one year, we wanted to do this river washed coffee with our producers in the Philippines, because that's kind of how they do their own when they have the leftover coffee that's not good enough for export or for distribution. They just take the cherries and they put them in a basket. That's what my producers tell me. She's like, yeah, we take them in the basket. We take the cherries, put them in a basket, float them in the river to wash them. I was like, well, what are you doing? What? You're taking coffee and putting it in a basket and floating it in a river, and that's washing the coffee? She's like, yeah, they just do that after, with the stuff that they're not selling. It's like they're offcuts. I was like, I told her we need to do that. Like next year, let's do that, and let's see how it turns out. And I thought it turned out. We did that with actual export quality coffee. I thought it turned out great. Like I loved it. So interesting stuff that you can find. Interesting stuff, as long as you're willing to try, right? Intimator says, this must be Gaelic. Good crack. Good crack? Crack? Good crack? Is that right? I have no idea. But good day. Good day to you as well. Interesting, when I was in Ireland a few years back, I remember I'm on the train in Dublin, and there are these young kids, teens, speaking Gaelic, like full-on Gaelic. And I mentioned that to a friend of mine, and he was like, actually, that's really unusual. Or not unusual, but like our generation, people of our age, right? Like there's a certain time of Irish history where Gaelic was kind of suppressed or discouraged from being spoken widely. But evidently now younger people have been, encouraging themselves or somehow being encouraged to speak more Gaelic, to speak their own native tongue. And I was like, oh, that's really great. That's really, really wonderful. And I like the idea, even though I'm very bad at it, I think that it's important. And I like the idea of being able to speak multiple languages. I think you're just so much more enriched and better off if you can speak more. I mean, really, I can speak one language capably, and that's English, right? I can speak a smattering of other languages, but nowhere near the level that I would like to have been. And I think that's one of the problems with living in the United States is that we're very myopic in this pursuit of language. Like, how do you get to understand other people if you can't understand their language? How if you can't speak to them? And I really kind of was underscored from because since I did a lot of work in South America or Central America and Latin American countries, where we're trying to speak in Spanish, and my Spanish is mull at best, right? And I remember one time I was in Kona on a farm, taking a farm tour, talking to the farmer, and it was such a different experience because you're able to spontaneously ask questions in the moment, right? And have a deeper conversation. Whereas, if I'm sitting there talking to or touring a farm with a Spanish-speaking producer who only speaks Spanish, I have to try to find a way to understand what he's saying. Like I have fairly decent comprehension of Spanish, but so he's telling me something, but I still have to translate it, right? In my mind, I'm still which means that I'm half listening and half translating. And then I have to figure out what is it that I have a question about or I want to ask. And then I have to figure out how do I convert that from English into Spanish. And then how do I communicate that to this guy? And then he comes back and I had to do the whole thing again. Whereas if I was able to, when I was communicating with the farmer in Kona, it's just back and forth because there's no delay. There's no translation time. And so if I had better skills at language, that would be mitigated, which we did. I wish we were more better with that here. Powerplant says nothing cringier when a foreigner talks down to someone when trying to communicate in English. Oh gosh, no doubt, man, no doubt about that. Like the level of pride we Americans tend to exhibit in our ignorance is really quite dramatically shocking. Not shocking, but just dramatic. Gosh, crazy. It's like this guy can speak 6 languages. He's just struggling with trying to figure out what he's trying to say in this language, the only language you can speak. The only language, not just speak, but the only language you can comprehend, and you can barely comprehend it at that level. Anyway. So, as Intubator said, good Craig. I know slancha is like slancha. It looks like slinta to me, but slancha. I don't know. Craig. Anyway, it's St. Patrick's Day, so have a good one. Don't drink too much out there. Like if you're going out to party, don't go too crazy. Oh, speaking of which, you see the people partying yesterday, I think it was in Pittsburgh. They had a big party in Pittsburgh, street party for St. Patrick's Day at the university. And all these girls were sitting on top of the fraternity house roof that's over the front porch, and the whole thing collapsed. Did you see that? I just saw that a little while ago. I was like, oh my gosh. So this is the problem. Don't drink too much. Don't drink too much. Don't do too crazy. Mom, good to see you. Anton, always good to see you. Kent as well. Powerplant George and Paige and Naomi and everyone, thank you very much for tuning in. Always good to see you. We'll be back again tomorrow with another episode of the Coffee Q&A. We'll talk more about something. So hope you have a wonderful day and see you next time.